Welcome to the Outsmart Burnout podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Zarya Rubin, a functional medicine doctor, an international speaker, and a burnout badass because I've been there myself. After walking away from my own high-stress medical career, I discovered how to break free from burnout to reclaim my passion, purpose, and joy. And now I'm here to help you do the same. From science-backed tips to time-saving hacks, and hopefully some aha moments that just might change your life. So sit back, relax, and let's do this. Welcome to another episode of Outsmart Burnout. Today's guest is Dr. Rashmi Schramm, a board-certified family physician with over 2 decades of clinical experience. But trust me when I say she's so much more than a conventional doctor. Dr. Schramm is also a certified integrative health and wellness coach, a meditation and Ayurvedic lifestyle teacher, and a yoga Nidra healer. Over the years, she's transformed her own health, moving from burnout, chronic stress, insomnia, and migraines to vibrant health through meditation, plant-based nutrition, and holistic self-care. Now, through her private practice and coaching work, she helps busy professional women reclaim inner peace, resilience, and energy, empowering them to live meaningful, purpose-driven lives. In this episode, we'll dive into her journey, explore the mind-body connection, and find some practical wisdom to help you thrive, not just survive. So I can't wait to dive in with Dr. Rashmi. Hi.
Hello, Dr. Zarya. It's such an honor to be here. Thank you.
It's so great to have you. Just absolutely fell in love with you. We were at a conference together, and from that first night when you led us through that beautiful yoga Nidra ceremony under the supermoon, wow, with the 200-year-old cacti. It was kind of a magical experience, I have to say. So that was my intro to Dr. Rashmi. So it was a pretty special one. So we're very excited to have you.
Thrilled to be here. And that was such a magical night. I totally agree.
I would love to talk a little bit about your journey from probably a pretty straight and narrow path in medicine to then, veering off the path as I did and so many others have done. And tell us a little bit about your journey and what led you to medicine in the first place, and then what led you to find some twists and turns off the conventional path to healing and wellness.
Yes, of course. So my story begins in India. I actually was born in South India into a very large extended family, which is really how lucky I was to be able to live with a large extended family for the first 12 years of my life. And there was a lot of infusion on a daily basis into mindfulness awareness, into Ayurvedic principles, into meditation. We didn't really call them any of those things, but they were just what we did every day. So there was a lot of rituals that just seeped into my mind-body system at an early age. And then my brother and my parents and I immigrated to the US when I was 12. So that was 6th grade. And we went from an urban bustling center into a rural coal mining town in southwestern Virginia. And so those years I think of as just assimilation years, survival years, and necessarily had to let go of a lot of the identities, a lot of the rituals in order to assimilate. And ultimately, what led me into medicine to some degree was a knowing that I will always have a job. Knowing that I don't have to go back into where it no longer felt safe for me. That was part of it. But it also fit nicely into the linearity that I was so craving that we all love, right? So, so I'll do this part of college, and then I'll go to medical school, and then I'll go to residency, and then I'll have my job, and then I'll make it. Like, there was such an allure to that.
Medicine is great for control freaks like myself who've it is all mapped out. It's all planned for you. You don't have to worry. You don't have to think. You just do, and you just work really, really hard, but each step is laid out. And the rest of life isn't really like that.
No, and I think it's so attractive to be like, "Oh, I'll always be challenged. Sign me up. I know how to work hard. I know how to hustle, and I get rewarded every time for that." And it is incredible how attractive that is. So there was definitely that part. And then I think the other part too, and same for you, is we just genuinely want to help and create impact. Like that is very present. And so it's a nice combo. Medicine is such a nice combo for that. So that ultimately was what led me into medicine. And I brought back a lot of my meditation Ayurvedic practices when I was in college, but it was like very closeted and never came out of the closet. And then
You're a
real
closet meditator.
closet meditator literally for years. And then never talked about it. Felt like some kind of almost like a shame that I needed something that I couldn't just, like do what everybody else seemingly was doing, which was just running hard all the time. And
Mm.
and then it was ultimately so after residency, I was lucky enough to have a couple of kids who were amazing. They're now 21 and 19. And when they were little, and I was working a lot as an attending, and I met my husband in medical school, and he was working a lot as an attending, it was just so crunched, right? It's that crunchy period where everyone needs you all the time, and they needed you an hour ago. And it was that overwhelm. And I continued to feel emotional burnout, mental burnout, physical burnout. And I
Mm.
waited until I had a lot of physical symptoms before
Mm.
I really tried to do something about it. And ultimately, what ended up was I signed up to be a meditation teacher or meditation teacher training just on a whim. This was 15 years ago, maybe 16. And it was honestly because when I looked at the application, it said, if you sign up for this for the next 18 months, you are signing up you have to meditate twice a day. And I was like, yes, sign me up. I apparently need external accountability. I didn't understand at the time and I needed the community. And so that's really how that door got opened for me. Was really nothing else in conventional medicine was working for me. I was still feeling very, very burned out is
Mm.
really the idea of it. And everywhere I looked, the people who are lovely humans were also all very burned out in medicine.
Mm.
And those were all my friends. And I was married to one who was burned out. And so I was like, I just don't think this is how it's supposed to be because on the outside, gosh, everything looks amazing. Like I have the car, I have the house, I have the kids, I have the husband, like I have it all. And I'm a dumpster fire in here. And
Ugh.
so it
I
was,
think you just
classic
you
burnout.
you just hit the nail on the head that I think will resonate with so many of our listeners, so many women. It's very similar to my story too. It's like from the outside, your life looks perfect. You have all the trappings of success and quote unquote happiness. You've got all the measures, the external metrics of, you've got the husband and the house and the car. And I didn't have those things, but I had the career and the fancy degrees and the Ivy League and all of this. But on the inside, if you are crumbling and dying and just feel so stretched beyond your capacity, there's this sort of like cognitive dissonance that happens. And I think we often don't know how to name it. We often do feel a lot of shame around it. Like, why doesn't this match up? Why is what I feel on the inside so different from what's going on the outside? And I think having that language, being able to articulate that it is burnout really is something newer. Like I don't know at the time, did you realize you were burned out? Did all of your
Absolutely not. I had never heard of the word.
right.
And I had never even heard of the word self-care. Like that was really a shocking word when I heard it like a few years ago.
Well, in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, like that wasn't a thing. It was hustle culture. It was type triple A overachieve. I was living in New York City, working my butt off. That's what people did. You work to live. You did not live, well, you lived to work. You did not work to live. That was it. Your whole life was about work.
Yes,
And
absolutely.
we didn't have the language for it. And so talk to us a bit about you mentioned some physical symptoms. And how did you put two and two together to figure out, okay, like this is not sustainable. What is going on with me?
Oh, yeah. I mean, there were so many physical symptoms. ultimately where I ended up like, okay, this is not okay, was I was having chronic daily migraines for probably a year or two. And then I was having all kinds of problems with sleep, and they were obviously both related. And then I was having plenty of digestive issues. And,
Mm.
all my workup was coming up fine. It was fine. I mean, I was like 32. My my body was very healthy, 33, whatever it was. And ultimately, I was in clinic and I just had so much pain one day in my entire body, and I couldn't quite figure out where it was, that I was just crying. And so, in between patients, I would just go into another exam room and just lay down in a fetal position. And my very sweet office manager was like, "What is going on?" And I'm like, "Everything's fine." And then I remember the exact patient, and he was explaining something that didn't feel that important, but I really wanted to listen. And tears were just coming down. And it was from pain in my body. And I was like, okay. So,
Mm.
and at some point at lunchtime or whatever, I think I just couldn't actually physically get back up from an exam room that I had just laid down in. And so she promptly put me in her car and drove me to the ER. And what happened was I had just had lots and lots of kidney stones, and like a 35-year-old woman with kidney stones, because I was
My
probably
God.
drinking way too much coffee, way too much Diet Coke because I wasn't sleeping and I was addicted to Diet Coke. And so it's like I had to wait until then. Right. And I was laying there on the CT machine and I went, this is not sustainable, because at that point my head was like, oh, you've got stage 4 ovarian cancer. That's what this is. It was like all the trappings of like when we go into circular
You go to
thinking,
the worst
I can go
places.
right back to that place, right? And so that I think I needed to have that moment of like, well, you're going to die. Your kids are really young and all you've done is work. And was it worth it? And so for me, I had some decisions to make. Thank God it was kidney stones, because we can do something with that. Like
Right.
smokes, like thank you, universe, for that being what happened as my wake up call. And ultimately, within like a couple of months of that, I had moved my FT status a little bit back, and I signed up for this meditation teacher program. I started to really pay attention to like, do I really need to stay up with and back then it wasn't even computers, it was paper charts. I was staying up with
Mm.
paper charts. Like, how dangerous was that? That I had paper charts in my house that I would just, very carefully take back and forth. And I was like sitting there working on them
Mm.
till midnight, and none of it made sense to me. So I just started to make some different decisions. And at the time, I really didn't have like a coach or a therapist or somebody that I felt like had led the way. And so for me, what seemed really attractive was to sign up for this meditation program, because I had always felt at home in that sort of like crossroads of science and spirituality. And that's really where this program was absolutely. So it was led by a physician. It was all the teachers were physicians. And I'm like, yeah, sign me up. Like I will come in the door with science and then I will open up into spirituality. And that's exactly what happened.
That's so fabulous. I absolutely love that. And what an incredible story. And I think you're absolutely right about sometimes it takes something pretty shocking and major to wake us up, to snap us out of it. It's like this wake up call that, we almost shouldn't have to wait for because my gosh, that stuff is dangerous. But your
It's very
body
dangerous.
your body is going to tell you in one way or another, like, this is not sustainable. We have to stop. We have to do something different. We have to find another way. And I think, thank goodness you were able to do that and find another way through meditation. So talk to us a little bit about, how meditation sort of unlocked a different modality for healing and this more integrative path towards wellness and what that means to you and how maybe you use it with your patients and clients.
I do. I absolutely do. I would love to. I just like to define meditation and mindfulness, because I think we can all think of them as so many different
Yes.
things.
Yes.
And so the
Let's
way that
do
I
that.
think of meditation, and there's so many different ways to meditate, not one is better than the other, but there are. Meditation to me is just moving from activity into stillness, or moving from activity into silence. And we can do that in a number of different ways. But the idea is that we're already always at that silence or that stillness, and we're just accessing it. That's all. And so it's a remembering practice is how I think of meditation. And mindfulness is kind of, to me, the definition that I like to go by is the awareness that arises when we are paying attention to this present moment without judgment and with curiosity. And so, Zarya, I think you and we're having a mindful conversation. We're paying attention, we're not judging, and we're curious. And ultimately, what I think of meditation as a way to strengthen our mindfulness muscle. And there are a myriad of ways to practice mindfulness. The way I think of meditation is a formal practice of mindfulness. And I hope that that helps.
I love those definitions. I think, yeah, the terms get tossed around. They're often confused and confounded. And I think that people think of meditation as maybe you have to be a Buddhist monk in a monastery sitting on a cushion for 2 hours. And it really doesn't have to be like that. And meditation, we can make it accessible to everyone, really. That's how I encourage my patients and clients to not be afraid of meditation. I personally meditate multiple times a day, but I was the person who used to say, I'm too stressed out to meditate. Meditation's not for me.
Same, honey. I mean, I remember like, oh my God, the first time, like when I first got into like my first few sessions, and I was like, and I wrote, I wrote to my teacher and I was like, look, I appreciate everyone in my group, but like I'm in a special situation. I've got 2 little kids, a full-time job, and I just don't have any this kind of time. So she was like, "Oh, okay. Well, then why don't you meditate for an hour twice a day?" And I'm like, "I what?" So the idea is for the person who thinks they don't have time to meditate, they're the exact people who actually need the practice of meditation.
Exactly. And I think back to my former super stressed out self. If I was too stressed to meditate, I was exactly the person who needed meditation, and meditation was exactly what I needed. And thank goodness I discovered it, and back, not that long ago in 2018, and have not missed a day since, because I track it. I use the Headspace app, and my husband gives me a lot of grief for it. He's like, I think that kind of defeats the purpose of meditation, that you track that you meditate every day. I was like, okay, shut up. I'm still a type 2, type 8 overachiever, and like, whatever, like, it's fine.
What I think the beauty of living in the age of tech, Zarya, is that we actually get to choose how we use that tech rather than it using us. And it occurs to me like this is a really brilliant way for you to partner with tech. Why not?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of demystified meditation for me a little bit in the beginning, because there was a whole guided series of learning how to meditate, which made it very bite-sized and accessible. So you started off, I think it was like you meditated for a minute or 2 minutes, and we worked up to 3 minutes, I think. And like in the beginning, that felt long to me, but achievable. And it wasn't like overwhelming, this notion that you had to sit there in silence and, vacate your mind for an hour, because that's really not what meditation is. And that's what I tell folks. And so maybe talk a little bit about that. So like people sort of are under the misconception that meditation means you have to have a blank mind.
Yeah, I love that question. So that was actually what I used to think as well. And we tend to judge our own meditation practice as well, which is so funny because if it is an act of mindfulness and mindfulness means there's awareness without judgment, we're actually kind of like negating the whole practice itself. And so there are, to me, 4 very valid experiences during any meditation experience. So for the sake of this, let's just say somebody decides they're going to meditate today. They listen today and they're like, I'm just going to sit down. I'm going to set a timer for 5 minutes and I'm just going to notice my breath. That is a valid meditation practice. So there are 4 valid experiences that can happen during that meditation practice. And it's really important that we understand that. So the first one is our mind can be racing. And the fact that we notice that our mind is racing, that thoughts are coming through, is awareness. And it counts as a valid experience during meditation. So congratulations. Right. So the second is we can fall asleep. If the body needs rest, it will absolutely fall asleep. There is no question about that. Right. So, and that's a valid experience. And the third experience can be you're just literally following your breath, or a mantra, for example. I teach a mantra meditation, or if it's a yoga nidra, you're just following the actual guidance itself. That is a valid experience during meditation. And then the fourth valid experience is what we call turiya, or glimpsing the soul. It's this idea of being beyond space and time. It's a blissful nothingness that we can get reconnected to. Now, when I say those four valid experiences, the mind will instantly automatically go into the fourth state that I just talked about, which is turiya, which is this blissful state. And that's what we want. And the one way to guarantee that we will never get there is to have an attachment to getting there. And so much of this practice is letting go, surrendering, allowing, surrendering, being with. And that to me explains how you cannot fail at meditation. You cannot be good or bad at meditation if all of those are valid experiences.
Okay, I love that. I think I've experienced all of those in meditation. Thankfully, not so much the first one anymore. That used to be my default of the mind racing and, the monkey mind that we talk about. But now I try to move towards the other states. Definitely fall asleep sometimes, which is okay. Yeah, it's beautiful. And it's such a relaxing process if you can allow yourself to get there. And so I guess that brings me to my next question is how do you work with, busy, high achieving, driven professional women and convince them that, yeah, hey, maybe you need to make time for this? And how can folks maybe incorporate or build some sustainable, these micro wellness practices into their routine?
Great question. And I think it's so diverse. The answer can be so diverse. But if we wanted to bring it all together, the thread would be something like meet that person where they are, right? And so if someone is like me, 15 years ago, where I was pretty sure and I was pretty convinced that I didn't even have 30 minutes a day to meditate, then I've got to meet that person where they are. And oftentimes, what for sure will work is to start really, really small and to stay consistent with it. So, your description of starting with the Headspace app and just doing 1 minute at a time, that's a great entryway into any meditation practice. And so, usually, if I kind of invite someone who's interested already, who's curious already, who feels frustrated, right? So, there has to be some intent for exploring what's there. Once we have that established, if we can say, can we have 2 minutes just to practice breath work? Usually the answer is yes. Can we have 5 minutes for no headphones, no electronics outside on a walk? Usually the answer is, yeah, I can try that, right? And so sometimes it is not safe for someone who may be very close to a trauma or maybe is in grief to just sit down on a mat and meditate for 30 minutes. It makes no sense for that person. It's going to leave them worse than it did before. And so oftentimes for that person, it's can we go for a walk? Can there be some movement? You don't have to sit still, but can there be some movement? And can there be just a noticing of what sounds you're hearing, of what you're seeing, without necessarily having to judge it? So just literally being with what's there can be so healing because that is our lives. It's unfolding in this very minute. And so sometimes it's movement, and yoga is a great way to do that, right? And it's mindful movement. So that can be something, especially yoga outdoors, anything like that. And sometimes it's an invitation for a really soft practice like a yoga nidra, where all they have to do is lie down and follow along. And the hardest thing you'll do is try not to fall asleep. Most people will buy into that. And so it really depends on what piques that person's initial interest, is how I would say that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's so important to validate that everybody's at a different point in their journey and starting small and getting those small wins and having something like a moving meditation practice or a sensory noticing practice. Those are so great. I would love for you to go into, because we have you here, this scientific, amazing doctor woman. I think we all intuitively know that meditation works and it's good for us. But I know that there's a lot of scientific research out there about meditation and mindfulness and why it is so important for stress reduction, burnout, healing, all of these things, and maybe touch on some of the science for us.
I would love to. So there are now thousands of studies that are out, and they are actually really high quality studies. And so what we understand, and I tend to think of this as science catching up to ancient wisdom, right? Because every ancient wisdom tradition understood this. And so for me, I chuckle a little bit sometimes, even though I love the science and I study the science and I teach the science, that there was a time in my life that I didn't believe anything that didn't have quote unquote evidence for it, because that's how we were were trained, you know? And so
Yes.
there was a teacher of mine that once said, well, how much more evidence do you need other than this particular practice has been really sacredly passed down from teacher to student, student to teacher, like for 5,000 years? Woman, how much more evidence do you need? And I was like, well, can you show me a brain scan? Just one brain scan. No, but all joking aside, I think just acknowledging that every ancient wisdom tradition has a practice, whether they call it meditation or something else, that has been passed down as a way for us to reconnect with our higher selves, with our true selves. It's just an acknowledgement of it. And so the science of it is pretty spectacular, actually. And so what we tend to see pretty quickly is shifts in the neurotransmitter activity. And so and this can be reproduced over and over again. So when somebody practices fairly consistently for about 4 weeks or so, about a 20-minute meditation 5 days a week, we tend to see about a 35 to 40% bump in serotonin, a 35 to 40% bump in norepinephrine. We also tend to see up to a 60% sustained elevation of dopamine levels. And so that is pretty incredible just in 4 weeks. And there have been now studies published comparing mindfulness based stress reduction or that sort of practice, which is meditation, to an SSRI that's commonly used, Lexapro, and they were actually very equal to each other. And so over just the course of 4 months, and that is pretty incredible, right?
Wow.
And it goes even beyond that. When those neurotransmitter changes are happening, there's also a pretty rapid shift in neuroplasticity as well. And what we tend to see is a downregulation of some of the alarm system, the amygdala. Like there is just less sort of reactivity and more of a connection within the prefrontal cortex. And so the white matter actually changes over time in somebody that's been meditating. So if you had a scan before you started meditating 2018 to now, you could then see the shifts in your prefrontal cortex. And that's really cool. And so when you have a lifetime meditation,
As a former neurologist, I'm kind of bummed I didn't do that.
yeah, exactly. This is why I'm throwing you that because I know you're a neurologist. So those are just in the brain, and then the body, similar things start to happen. Cortisol levels tend to decrease. Cortisol in and of itself isn't the devil, and we need it, of course. But most of the time, by and large, most of us, if you're listening to this, you probably have some level of chronic daily stress, which is increasing your chronic daily cortisol level, which is increasing inflammatory markers, inflammation, et cetera, et cetera. And so it's an anti-inflammatory. So meditation is an anti-inflammatory. And what's really, really interesting is that effect really never goes away if we keep this up. And it is a faster way for the body to come into homeostasis, right? So homeostasis is dynamic non-change in the midst of constant change. And so the body has such an innate wisdom that if we were able to just reconnect back into the mind, body, spirit system, that we come back into homeostasis over and over and over again. And that's just like the tip of the iceberg for everything that we know about why science is catching up to the practice of meditation.
Okay, I love that because, yes, on an intuitive level and on a historical level, I mean, we know that these practices have been around forever, and there's a reason why they have endured and why they transcend, time and space and culture and generations. And now we have the tools to really be able to document and say, okay, yeah, there's some science behind it too. So that was a fascinating explanation. Thank you. I wanted to get into a little bit into yoga and yoga nidra because that's a kind of a really neat side addition to this conversation. And as someone who's practiced yoga for, I don't know, 25 plus years, I had not really done a yoga nidra practice until I worked with you and we did that full moon experience. So talk to us a little bit about that and the differences and what that involves and how somebody might find that and what they might experience if they try it.
Of course, yeah. So yoga as a whole, the way I think of it is a tool for living our highest and best lives. And oftentimes in the West, so there are 8 limbs to yoga. And oftentimes in the West, we will find that we are highly focused on that fourth limb, which is asanas or postures. Not a thing wrong with that, but it is still part of a larger system. And I also go to yoga asana practice on a daily basis. And so this isn't in no way, shape, or form to say we shouldn't be doing this. We should absolutely be doing this. And at the same time, right, like, so at the end of each of those yoga practices, yoga asana practices, there is some period of time where, we call it shavasana, where we are integrating. So yoga itself means union. And so when we think of yoga nidra, nidra means sleep. And so yoga nidra is a sleep-based meditation. And both practices, in particular, yoga nidra is designed specifically to take us beyond the body and the mind and into the energy body, into the pranamaya kosha, if you will. And it's actually very much so an energetic transmission practice in that the person who is facilitating, it's often best facilitated with someone who is deeply grounded and in a state of some amount of expansion themselves. It's not necessary because they can actually get there when they're facilitating. And so that's kind of the premise of it. And ultimately, we use some very basic things. So we have intention setting, we have affirmations, we have breath work, we have body scanning, and all of those really, if the entire instruction is just follow the guidance, we can do that. In fact, it's kind of a relief to be like, sure, I don't have to think about anything. And every time I catch myself in a thought, no problem. I just come right back to the guidance because there is always guidance. And so it is designed to drop you off into a transcendent state and then pick you back up. It doesn't always work like that, but that is the entire design of a yoga nidra practice, or at least the lineage of which I have studied. And so to me, it is the most time effective way to pop into the bliss body, if you will, and to bring some of that ecstatic knowing bliss back into everyday hustle. And whether we're in hustle culture or not, we do have to hustle a lot of times.
Okay, I love all of this, and I love the interconnection and the thread that I'm seeing through all of these different modalities and techniques. We've talked about mindfulness, we've talked about meditation, we've talked about yoga and yoga nidra. It seems like the underlying theme is really about mind-body connection and the bidirectional nature of that, but also about almost transcending our normal state of being and consciousness. And maybe you could talk to us about that and what the mind body connection means to you and about consciousness and how we transcend it.
Oof. This is pretty platinum level here. I love it.
We're going deep on the Outsmart Burnout podcast.
Yes, we are. So the way that I learned this, and it didn't make any sense to me when I first learned this like 15 years ago. I was like, I don't know what that means. Like, I'll just come back to it. And so over time, as most things do for me, the way that my brain works is I have to like just let it go, like just let go of trying to understand something. And then there will just be those moments of like, oh my God, that's what that means. And so this is the very same. As I'm explaining it to you, dear listener, if you're like, she is insane, it's okay. Just like you could just hear it, let it fall where it falls, let it land where it lands. And then maybe some other time it'll pick back up. Or maybe you're like, of course, this is exactly what I've been talking about. Like wherever we are on that spectrum, like we're cool with it. Right. So my understanding of consciousness is that everything is consciousness, right? Like we understand that everything is energy, equals MC squared. Like that has been established. Like energy and matter are interchangeable. And that's really exactly where this comes in. There's some amount of like quantum physics, which I truly don't understand. My younger daughter is a quantum physicist, which I really, truly, like she's a nuclear engineer. It's wonderful, but I don't understand it to the degree that
Wow.
probably other people do. So when we think of it as that, there's the most materialistic part of ourselves is what we can see, right? It's our body. And of course, we understand that we have a body. And so we start with that. And oftentimes, we just think that's all there is. We just think there's this mind and there's this body and that's all that we are. And it's pretty limiting because we're constantly just trying to interchange our thoughts. And although it can be done, it can be pretty time consuming. It can be labor intensive. So the only reason to even think about we have an energy body, right? And so now we have fairly good evidence that we can certainly sense other people's energies. And some people are more sensitive. We call them empaths, and some people maybe don't necessarily sense that, right? Yeah, exactly. Raise your hand, right? Exactly. And so heart math can now show us that our heart energy, that kind of energy extends about 8 feet, maybe a little bit wider than that. And this is without sight. This is without body language. This is just a sensation. So that's the energy body, right? And so really above that sits the mental body or the myokosha. And so that's often why we say wherever your attention goes is where energy flows. Right? So if we're constantly focused on something terrible happening, that's where our energy is going to go. And oftentimes that terrible thing does happen, right? And so just interestingly, so that's the monomyokosha. And then beyond that is the wisdom body. It's this wisdom that is beyond thoughts, that is beyond beliefs. It's a knowing kind of space that we occupy. And then beyond that is the bliss body, which is always connected to all other beings and to divinity. And so when we can let go of some of these layers of our attachment to some of these layers, and that's really what we mean by going beyond the mind and the body. And prana, which is energy, is said to be the vehicle in which we travel from one thing to the other, which is why we kind of pop into the energy body during yoga nidra practice or yoga practice. Or by the way, you've had these experiences when you've watched a beautiful sunset or gone for a beautiful hike. Like oftentimes it's just right there. And we can experience this as awe and wonder. Like we can have all these different experiences of expanded states of consciousness where we are super hyper present. Curiosity is leading the way, and we feel awe, we feel tingles, all of those things. And so this is just a very specific tool to get us there when we practice, if that makes sense, to get us into the bliss body, at least even for a nanosecond, so that we can kind of continue to remember who we are. So I host retreats, and really the subtitle of them is just remember who you are.
Oh my gosh. Okay, that was amazing and so deep, but yet almost sort of tangible in a way that was understandable for me because I can definitely relate to those different states. And I definitely have had the experience of, an awe-inspiring sunset or moment where you feel transcendent and connected to the universe and the millennia that this, planet has been around for. And then I've also had the experience of being within a certain radius of someone and being like, not for me, turning around, going the other way. Like you can feel those energy fields and that radiation coming off. And then in the positive sense too, like I've gravitated towards certain people and certain experiences. And I think that it's such an interesting concept for people to grasp. And I love the idea of retreats where this is explored and you really help people kind of like find their way back to themselves and remember who they truly are. Because I think that a lot of that does get lost in the shuffle when you're in constant doing mode and you're not in being mode at all.
Yeah, that's right.
And
That's
I
right.
think that that's actually how we end up going down a path that can lead to burnout is if you sort of disconnect yourself completely with who you are and your true self and you're just in constant doing mode.
Which, by the way, is so easy to do, isn't it?
I mean, the world is going to suck your attention and focus and it's going to be demanding. It's like this like voracious, monster beast that is constantly demanding to be fed. And you can do that, but it's a bottomless pit, right? It's never ending. You're not going to get to the end of your to-do list. This is something that I, struggle with. It's like you think you can, but you can't.
No, yeah. And
And
really
yeah.
interesting is I used to definitely talk about arrival fallacy. So I'm an empty nester and I've really scaled back on how much I work. I make up my own schedule. So I really had this idea of like, oh, of course, like I'm going to have all this extra time. And I've gone and filled it. I've gone and filled it all. And so it is until I go ahead and become aware of like, I'm going to peel this back. I'm going to peel this back. I'm going to peel this back. So allowing ourselves to have that white space is such a gift, like you were talking about, to be.
Hmm. Okay, well, I'm going to surprise you with something now, and I don't know if it's possible, but I feel like once I have you here captive, I want to take advantage of
Let's
all
do
of
it.
your wisdom and skill. And for our audience, I don't know if it's possible for you to share any kind of brief practice with us, whether it's a meditation, a nidra, a mantra, some breath work. Like, what could you leave our listeners with today that they can just take a moment and drop into that calm state or a deeper state. And then they can replay this episode and share it with friends and family. And they can just get a little bit of the Dr. Rashmi wisdom on this podcast today.
How would you like just a 5-minute mantra meditation? Would that be all right?
I think that would be amazing. And of course, if you're, driving or operating heavy machinery, you might want to press pause, come back to it, or pull over. We want everyone to be safe because this is going to be, it's going to be pretty magical. So,
Yeah, yeah. So I would invite, if you can, just if you're seated, then to kind of get into a comfortable position. And I also like to call it a tall, dignified position because slumping kind of just, yeah. So see if you can, if your legs are crossed, see if you can uncross them. And something really fun to think about during a meditation practice as your hands are on your thighs is we generally tend to say, if you'd like more grounding today, if you're really feeling super blown everywhere, chaotic, then we recommend that you have your palms down on your thighs. And conversely, if you're feeling like you have questions that you want the universe to help you give you some answers, then we turn the palm upwards. So choose whichever one. There's no right or wrong. Just take a moment just to notice what your mind body system is asking you for and just get really comfortable. And if it feels safe, go ahead and close your eyes. And if that doesn't feel okay, it's not a problem. Just have a soft downward gaze. We're only just trying to minimize the amount of information that we're taking in over just the next few minutes. And then before we begin, let's just take 2 big deep breaths. And as you exhale, I really want to hear it. I'd love to hear a big sigh. And let's do that one more time. And then as you're coming into this practice, just bring a soft sense of curiosity towards the parts of you that are maybe offering, hey, you don't have time for this. There's so much more left to do. Just honoring all of those parts. And then perhaps just giving yourself an invitation to just be in this moment just for the next few minutes. You can always pick up all of those tasks as soon as we're done here. Just give yourself some permission. And as you do so, just bring your attention to your shoulders and see if you can move your shoulders away from the ears just a bit. Beautiful. And then bring your attention to the jaw. Can you release the tension from the jaw just a bit? We hold so much tension there. And then I'd like for you to just place your attention on your breath, maybe at the level of the heart, not forcing it. See if you can notice the in-breath, the pause, and the out-breath. And from here, I'd like for you to repeat the following phrase by filling in the blanks. I'd like for you to silently repeat, I am, and then your first name and your last name. So Zarya would say, I am Zarya Rubin. Just repeat that softly and silently to yourself. And now I'd like for you to drop the last name and just repeat, I am, and then your first name. I am, and your first name. And now dropping the name all together and just silently repeating, I am. And from here, we'll pick up the Sanskrit vibration for I am, which is so, hum. So on the in-breath, hum on the out-breath, silently repeating, so on the in-breath, hum on the out-breath, going at your own pace, and just following the mantra so effortlessly, not forcing. Just continue to silently repeat, so, hum, and I'll mind the time. And if the mind has wandered, you've done nothing wrong. Just returning back to so, and still keeping the eyes closed, just gently releasing the mantra and just resting and being, resting in Sat, Chit, Ananda, love, knowingness, and bliss. Just resting. And still with your eyes closed, just placing the palms of your hands at the center of your chest at the level of your heart. And as you do so, sending yourself deep compassion, deep gratitude for creating this space in your busy life and bringing to mind a sensation of gratitude for the many blessings in our lives. Just allowing that gratitude to wash over you. Now taking a couple of deeper breaths, and if it feels okay, placing the hands in prayer position or Anjali Mudra and just bowing head to heart, acknowledging your higher self, acknowledging your humanity in all its glory and all its mess, just acknowledging it and bringing gratitude to it. And just when you're ready, you can gently open your eyes. Namaste. The divine light in me sees and honors the divine light in you.
Oh, God, that was so great. Thank you. Thank you. Wow, what a gift that we have had this time together. And wow, I think this is an episode that folks are going to want to replay because there's so much amazing wisdom and deep knowing here. And thank you for sharing. I mean, it's like you've been on this incredible journey from childhood and, beyond and maybe even before, who knows? Because it feels like you're really connected to this deeper, higher energy and power that you're able to transmit to all of us. And so we're really lucky to have gotten to share this hour with you. And if folks want to connect more deeply with you, we're going to share all of your links and things in the show notes. But how can folks find you and possibly work with you and maybe go on one of your amazing retreats?
Yeah. So, first of all, I admire so much of the work that you're doing. I want to just reiterate to you, dear listener, congratulations on finding Dr. Zarya. She is incredible. So, that's the first thing I want to say. I also
Thank
have a
you.
podcast on which you are going to come on soon.
That's right. That's
Can't wait
right.
for.
Yes. I
So
can't
my
wait.
podcast is called Inner Peace and Power. People can find me there. My website is also very easy, rashmischramm.com. I'm on all the socials at Dr. like DR period and then my name. So please come find me. And my retreats do come up pretty quickly and they sell out pretty quickly. But if you're signed up for the newsletter, then you'll be the first to know.
Amazing. But yes, all that info will be in the show notes. So please check it out. And if you love this episode, if it resonated with you, if you got something out of it, certainly that incredible meditation at the end, please, like it, share it with someone who could use this moment of peace and leave us a review. It really does help folks discover the show and it really helps connect us with the women who are looking for this. And as always, remember, burnout is not your destiny. It's your wake up call.
Beautiful. Thank you for this.